Welcome to the second ever Celigo user group. I'm Corey Anderson. I'll be the host of the meeting today. And so I'm going to basically talk briefly here about the Celigo user group, and then we'll get into our presentation shortly. So we have a website. It's celigousergroup.com. You can go to the website, and it shows you the upcoming meetings. And then we also record and post all of our past meetings. So we have one meeting that we started last December, and that meeting is posted on the website. And I'm going to go show you the website here in just one second. You can go ahead and check that out. We also have a contact us page. So if you know anybody that's in the Celigo space or uses Celigo or is interested in Celigo, you can have your colleagues sign up on our contact page. Once they sign up, they'll get notifications of the upcoming meetings that we're going to host. We also have on our website a handlebar example repository. You can submit your examples for inclusion. If you have any great handlebar examples, you can email that to info@celigousergroup.com. And then our frequency, we're going to have these meetings bi-monthly starting in February. So every other month after this one. Real quick, I'm going to flip over and just show the Celigo user group website. On our homepage here, kind of tells you a little bit about us, what we're doing here, what our goals are. We have our future meetings listed down here. And then you can go to our past meetings. If you didn't see our past meeting, you can find it here. This is for folks that have maybe not used Celigo as much, but I think there's some tips and tricks in here for everybody, even if you have been using Celigo for a while. It's the fundamentals of integrating with NetSuite. We did this meeting last December as our inaugural meeting, and I think a good foundation to kick off the user group. We also have our next meeting listed here, so you can bookmark this page. This will be updated with the next meetings. This one is obviously today. We're talking about Mapper 2.0 and Transformation 2.0. We're going to learn all about that. And then we also have the past meetings section here, and then our handlebar references. I'm kind of second guessing the handlebar references page that we have here because I'm not sure if it's going to be useful or not. And I'll tell you why, because I was working on an integration the other day, and I needed to modify a handlebar, and I used the built-in Copilot AI in Integrator IO to help me with the handlebar, and it was amazing. It solved the problem. It modified the handlebar. It did exactly what I needed it to, and it just made it so easy. So I'm not sure if these handlebar examples are going to be necessary anymore now that we have that AI Copilot built into Integrator IO, but maybe I'll repurpose this for something else later on. But anyway, and then here's our contact page, just some basic contacts if you want to sign up and make sure you get notifications of the upcoming meetings. So back to here. Sorry. This is the next one. So at the end of our meeting, we're going to have an open forum. And that open forum is designed for anybody that has a question or a problem to ask the group. And you can maybe share your screen if you're having a problem with the handlebar or a flow or anything integration related. We can talk about it as a group in that space. If nobody has anything to talk about, that's totally fine too. We're just going to have the space there for people to help each other out if there are any issues that anybody wants to discuss. We're going to have a post-meeting survey. I think it'll pop up at the end, like when we close this Zoom meeting, it'll probably pop up in your browser. I'm also going to send that email or send that survey link in an email afterwards in case you don't get that pop up. And the survey it's really important to us because this is a brand new user group, and we're trying to find our way and find out what people want to hear about, what topics they want to the topics they want to do. I also want to hear from other people that are potential that are interested in presenting. And I think Rob, you might have mentioned you were interested in presenting, and so I'm probably going to take you up on that at some point. And thank you for filling out the survey last time. So please take a few minutes, fill out that survey. It's going to be extremely helpful to us as we're moving forward with the user group and figuring out how to service the community in the best way that we can. And if you're brand new to Celigo, you can sign up for free, Celigo.com. You click try for free. I think you get a 30-day unlimited account, so you can do some building and testing and sample the platform. And then don't quote me on this, but I think you can also maintain a free account indefinitely with two endpoints and one flow. Um, that may have changed, but I haven't heard anything that has changed. So anyway, if you're new to Celigo, you can go try it for free and find out there at Celigo.com. So I also want to mention the Celigo user group is an independent organization. We are not run by Celigo, but we are supported by Celigo. So I'd like to say thank you to Celigo for supporting this user group and helping us get it off the ground. This user group is for the community. It's for everybody that's involved in the Celigo space. So that's end users and consultants and anybody that's interested in just learning more about Celigo and the Integrator IO platform and all that it can offer. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Shah. Kevin Shah is a senior solution consultant with Celigo. So Kevin is going to walk us through Mapper 2.0, Transformations 2.0 today, and hopefully we'll all walk away smarter than we were before and empowered to go do better, build better integrations with this new knowledge. So at this point, Kevin, thank you for presenting today and being here. And again, thank you to Celigo for your overall support. I'll turn it over to you at this point, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Corey, for inviting me. And hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Shah, Senior Solution Consultant with Celigo, based out of Dallas, Texas. I've been with Celigo since December of 2021. Ever since then, helping our customers and partners with integrations. I know today we are going to cover Mappers and Transformation 2.0. So basically, this session is for all the business users who are interested in knowing more about Mappers 2.0 as well as transformation. But at the same time, it is also for technical users because we are talking about 2.0, right? Which has advanced features available. So let me do one thing. Let me share my screen and let me know once you see my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep,
With
looks good.
Mappers. Awesome. So, let me start with Mappers. And again, Mappers and Transformation 2.0 are in the back end, it is governed by the same engine. So if you understand one and if you master one, you can easily work on other one. So if you learn Mappers, it is really easy to learn transformation or vice versa. And any which ways. Today we are going to cover both of them. So, so coming to mappers, right? What exactly is a mapper? So at a high level, a mapper is what tells Celigo how to move data from one system to another. So let me give you one example. When an order leaves Shopify and needs to land in NetSuite, the two systems don't naturally speak the same language, even though both use JSON in the background. However, their structures are different. Field names are different. Arrays are structured differently, and sometimes even the values need to be reformatted. And that is where exactly Mapper comes into picture. It acts as a translator. And the good thing is that you don't have to write a single line of code with mappers. Easily with a visual representation, you can easily map fields using Celigo. And that is what exactly we are going to learn today. Uh, Now, you might have a question. Why do we need mappers? Because no two systems structure data the same way. Let me give you one example. Shopify might represent line items as an array inside an order object. Let's would expect those same line items inside a sublist structure. So without a mapper, data won't land properly into your destination application. So this is exactly why we need mappers. Now, let me go to the next slide. So Celigo supports four different type of mapping. So first one is standard mapping, like you can see over here. Standard mapping simply connects one source field directly to the destination field. Like you can see over here, I have pulled ID from BigCommerce and directly connected it to the external ID from NetSuite. That's it. You don't need any transformation over here. Second is hard coded. For example, in this case, I've just hard coded billing address Delhi, but see, you're working with a customer, right? And say customer will always be active in your destination application. You can just hard code it to active, something like that. So you can just hard code it. Third Third example over here is multi-field mapping. So for example, if you want to perform certain calculations on multiple field on the source record, right? Addition, multiplication, and so on, you can do that and finally get a total into one of the field. In this case, I'm using that's what as my destination field. So I'm just doing calculation on multiple fields like handling cost, base shipping cost, and best wrapping cost, and then I'm finally calculating all the totals and in the total field. For that, I'm using multi-field mapping. And finally, the last one is lookup. So, for example, say in most of the system, right, when you're working, say if the country code in your source system is United States versus in your destination application it is USA, right? So you need some translation table, and that is when lookup come into picture, where you can easily create translation table. And again, I'm going to show you all this while I'm showing you the platform. But these are the four mapping types currently Celigo supports. Now going to the next slide over here. So first, right, when we say data mapping, right, this is the high level alignment between source and destination structure. So at this level, we are asking what object are we mapping? What records are being created? How does the overall structure align? For example, I want to send Shopify order to NetSuite sales order or Shopify customer to NetSuite customer. This is structural alignment, making sure that right data set goes to the right record type. If you get data mapping wrong at this level, everything downstream breaks, right? So effective use means start by understanding the full payload structure before mapping the individual. Like you can, and I will show you, like you can easily see entire payload in the mapping screen itself. Next is field level mapping. This is exactly where mapper really operates. This is where we define source field to destination field with direct mapping, or like I mentioned, you can hard coded values, you can create lookups, or you can leverage multi-field combination, right? So this is basically a precision layer. And finally, the third layer is data transformation. So say, for example, you need to, in most of the system, you might have to change the date format, right? Because the date format might be different between your source and destination application. So you can do all the transformation, or maybe you need to convert your text cases or concatenate two fields into one, or apply certain basic conditioning logic. So that is where this particular you can leverage all the data transformation option like handlebars which we have within our platform to do all the data transformation. Now, moving to the next slide. So let me do one thing. Let me show you a flow with for Mapper 1.0. And I know our focus is not Mapper 1.0, but want to just showcase the so that you understand the difference between Mapper 1.0 and Mapper 2.0. So let me go to my in and again, those who are new to our platform, right? This is Celigo's IPS, which is Integrator IO. And over here, you are seeing multiple tiles, right? One for finance and spend management, one for HR and people management, one for product management. So again, we are an iPaaS platform as far as you have APIs available. We should be able to automate any application, whatever you're working with. On the left hand side over here, you are seeing all the blocks which we have, like AI Studio, all the resources to help you build the flow, and so on. And just over here, if I click on connection, we do have pre-built connector for more than thousands application over here. And we also have something called universal connectors like REST API, JDBC, HTTP. So in case if you're working with any homegrown application for which we don't have pre-built connectors, you can always leverage universal connectors. Likewise, our platform is also capable of working with EDI trading partners. So just a very quick overview of our platform. Now, going to the today's session, right? Let me open one flow and let me cover Mapper 1.0. So this is a simple flow where I'm pulling orders from BigCommerce, then pulling products, looking at the products for that associated orders, looking looking at the customer ID, getting the customer address, getting the shipping customer address, and finally importing in case if the customer is not present, creating customer in that suite, and if it is present, just leveraging the customer which is already available, and finally creating sales order in NetSuite. So let me open the mapping over here. So this is the place where we'll be doing fill-to-fill mapping between your source application and your destination application. And this is Mapper 1.0. And once you have connection established between your source application, in this case, BigCommerce, and your destination application, in this case, it is NetSuite. You don't have to remember the name of the field. If you just click over here, it should pull all the fields which are available on the on your destination as well as source application. And the good thing is that in case if you're working with any custom field, right? Like you can see over here, there are a lot of custom fields which we have created, like BigCommerce store internal. No, this is not a custom field, but we have a lot of customer fields like Celigo, Amazon, local selling pickup, location ID, and so on, right? So in case if you're working with any custom field, it will also pull in any custom field whatever are available on the NetSuite sales order object. Likewise for BigCommerce. And over here, like I said, right, we support four different mapping type. So standard is very simple, like mapping your customer ID with customer internal ID in NetSuite, or mapping your so that is as simple as that. Another mapping type is the lookup. Like you can see, it is notified with L. So if I open my get icon over here. So this is where I've created a static lookup where because there are multiple payments gateway available payment method available on the BigCommerce side, likewise multiple payment method available on the NetSuite side. So here what I'm saying is that on BigCommerce side, if you see that the payment method is cash on delivery, map it to cash in NetSuite. Or if you see check, map it to check. If you see manual payment, map it to EFT. Or if you see payment method as payment gateway, map it to PayPal and so on, right? And here are the options which are available. So, for example, say there is another type for which I don't have any mapping, right, which is coming out from BigCommerce. In that case, I can say that, okay, just fill this record so I know that what action we need to take, right, as a user. Or use any empty string, or use a null value as a default, or use a custom default cache as a default value in case if there is no mapping available. So I can say what action to take in case if there are no translation table available for that particular payment method type. Let me close this. Now another field which is available over here multi-field, right? So so over here there are n number of functions which are available. Like you can, if you want, you can multiply two fields. If you want, you can do something like if else, or if you can join two field into one, and so on, right? Multiple functions which are available over here. Also simultaneously, we have something called handlebar template, and there is a help document available on our help doc site where there are more than 100 functions which are available as a handlebar expression, right? And you can leverage handlebar expression like I'm leveraging over here, where to and over here, so to get the rate value, right? So again, this is where I'm leveraging multi-field where I am performing certain operations on one field and finally getting output in my destination in one of the field in my destination application. And if I close this, right, finally last field option which I want to showcase is hard coded one. Like you can see over here, where I'm just hard coding the value over here and to one of the default values. So for example, if you want to just like I said, right, if you want to hard code say subsidiary to one specific or warehouse location to any specific warehouse location for that particular Shopify store, you can do that. You can just hard code it. So these are four mapping type which are available. Once you have done the mapping, you can always preview your data to make sure that data looks all good. So this is how the output look like. This is what I will be sending to my destination application, in this case, NetSuite. So it will allow, it will, once you have defined your mapping over here, it will also allow you to review the output to make sure that everything looks good. And also from view perspective, we support multiple view. So if you prefer this view versus the one which I prefer, right? You can just change to any view based on your preferences. So and again, this is Mapper 1.0. So this is the old one. And now for most of our connector, for all the HTTP based connector, we have something called Mapper 2.0, which will be covering. But let before covering that, right, with the help of an example, let me go back to my presentation over here and let me cover few slides. So over here, when it comes to Mapper 2.0, there are advanced features and functionalities which are available. Like you can see over here, it will show you like on which mapping step you're working. So that is what it will be showing you. Then again, if you're working on Mapper 2.0, you do have a flexibility to go back to Mapper 1.0. But again, if you have defined Mapper 2.0, right? Then you need to delete all the mapping in case if you still prefer working with Mapper 1.0. And I'm sure after today's session, you will be preferring Mapper 2.0 after knowing all the advantages which are available with Mapper 2.0. Then another options which are available is that you can refresh field, and it will, in case if you have new field available in your source record sample, right, it will just refresh that particular field. Likewise, you can shrink in case if you are working with nested structures, right, you can shrink it, you can expand it, you can filter out based on certain condition, you can search for the field and so on, right? And uh, I'm going to cover all these functionalities in detail while I'm covering a flow. But again, going to the next slide, right? Mapper 2.0 was built to handle modern API integrations. Most SaaS system today send data in nested JSON structure. For example, order contains header level fields, customer information, arrays of line items, possibly nested text detail or fulfillment information, right? Mapper 1.0 handled flat structure well. Like you can see in that particular example as well, right? The data was very flat in nature. Mapper 2.0 is designed specifically for complex JSON, and that is the new normal nowadays, right? It can really work very efficiently with nested arrays. And I will be showing you in my demo with hierarchical payloads, and also it has advanced filtering and selection options. So now for most of the imports, I would say this is our default. Mapper 2.0 is default. So let me go back to my integrator IO. Let me open one flow with Mapper 2.0. So I do have a flow, and it is a simple flow where I'm pulling customer details from Shopify, looking at the customer, looking at company records in Business Central, and finally creating customer in Business Central. So this is a very simple flow. And let me open mapping over here. So again, on the let me do one thing. Let me change the view. over here. So over here, if you see the input, right? So it is not a simple, if you see the input record over here, it has various, if you see, it has various nested structures like for address, for email, for companies and so on, right? So there is one layer of information which is on the header level. I have basic customer information, but for addresses, I do have a structure below it, right? Like you can see in the data right over here. So now let me go back to my simple view over here. So like you can see over here. So again, let me cover a few features first. Like I can see you exactly from the name itself, you know which you're applying Mapper 2.0 for which specific import step, right? From the name itself. So it will tell you that. Secondly, you can switch between Mapper 1.0 and Mapper 2.0 very easily in case if you still prefer working with Mapper 1.0. But in case if you have defined something in Mapper 1.0, you have to delete everything what you have defined over here, or else it will, by default it will consider mapper 2.0. Again, like I said, you can refresh field. I mean, if you have provided sample, it should pull in any new fields which are available. You can string the structure, you can expand the structure, because you are working with nested arrays, right? You can easily string and expand. If I click over here, you can filter easily based on required fields. So for most of the application, it will give you a list of required fields for your destination application. And or if you just want to fill by all the map field, you can do that easily. Now, you can also search for any destination field if you want to. Say if you are working with hundreds of fields, you can easily search by the name of any field so that you don't have to traverse through through entire record. You can just search it. And one very advanced feature which we have is auto-populate destination field. So what it will do is that it will auto-populate all the fields which we are getting from your destination application. And then you just have to map your source application. And this is very advanced in nature, and it will save you a lot of time. And another thing is that if you want, you can also remove all the mappings in one go. So if you just want to work with subset of field, right? You can just remove all the mappings and you can just work with subsets of fields if you want to. So it is lot it has really some cool features which are not available with Mapper 1.0. Now coming to the mapping type, right? So over here you are seeing all the source fields, and over here you are seeing all the destination fields over here, right? And if I just click over here, say for example, if you are working with any nested object, right? It will, and you don't have to. So in Mapper 1.0, right? If you say, for example, if you wanted to pull or if you wanted to work with any addresses, right? Because address do have a it is nested, right? It is object within object over here, right? It is in the form of array, like you can see in the data. So in Mapper 1.0, you had to either do some looping or something like that. But sorry, in Mapper 1.0. But with Mapper 2.0, it is really easy to work with a nested structure. Like directly, I can select customer ID over here, for example, and it will select from the structure. So, like you can see it over here, it will define the JSON path for it. So you don't have to do looping anymore. So this is how advanced. And again, I know I just have one layer of data over here, but say for example, multi you have nested arrays, like array within arrays. Even then, it is a lot easy. From the drop down, you can directly select what you want to work with do rather than iterating through for loop and so on. So even business user can easily do the mapping. You don't require any coding or any development background over here. You can easily work with it. Let me close this because I want to discard that particular change. And if I if I click on the gear icon over here, right? Again, from the from the mapping perspective, we support all the four different mapping type, right? So I'm not covering each and every mapping in detail, but just want to highlight there are some differentiation over here. So for example, if I open the handlebar expression over here, right? So this is the so over here I have written a handlebar where I'm just over here on the destination, I just want everything as a full name. So I do have a handlebar over here where I'm mapping my first name with the last. I'm concatenating my first name with the last name. And if I open my handlebar editor over here, we have something called Celigo AI. So you can easily leverage Celigo AI to help you build this particular handlebar expression. So this is something which is available in Mapper 2.0, where you can leverage Celigo AI to help you with handlebar expression. So in some instances, still you might have to reference the handlebar template help doc which we have available just to make sure that the AI is giving you the desired output. But most of the heavy lifting can be done by Celigo AI. And you can just ask AI in the plain text that can you help with concatenating first name with last name. That's easy. That's easy it is. Or you can just and say, for example, if one of your user has written this handlebar expression and you want to just know in plain text what exactly this handlebar is doing, you can just leverage Celigo AI to and click on explain selection, and it will tell you in plain text English that what exactly this handlebar is doing, like it is saying over here. And once you have the handlebar in place, you can preview it to make sure that you are getting the desired output. So it is that easy. If I close this, right? Another differentiation over here is that if I let me see if I have any example with lookup. If not any which was I can show you that example. So for example, if I click on lookup, so in Mapper 1.0, you will be having just two options. So one is static, which is like creating a translation table, like I showed the example with the payment method. But dynamically, if you want to pull something, right? If you want to give reference to customer ID and if you want to pull another record, you can do that as well using dynamic. But and this both and only two options are available with Mapper 1.0. But with Mapper 2.0, we have something called lookup cache. So in Celigo, you can store something as a cache memory up to 5 megabyte. You can store within Celigo. And in Mapper 2.0, you can reference that particular lookup cache memory. For example, if you're working with Shopify, you can store like your different sizes for variants for your products. If you're working with say t-shirts, right, and you have different sizes. And if you want to store all those information as a lookup cache, you can store it and then you can reference that particular you look up cache into your flow. So this is something which is only available as a Mapper 2.0. And if I close this, right, another example which we have, so Mapper 2.0 comes with two modes, which is like create destination record from source record, which is simple. I have a source record, like I can see over here, and I am just creating another record based on that particular source record. That is as simple as that. Another mode which we have is to create multiple rows based on that particular source record. So, and this is useful. Say, for example, you want to export everything into your CSV file, right? Or into your data warehouse where you have multiple rows. That is where this particular option comes into picture. And I do have one example when I'm covering transformation for this particular example. So that is when I will be covering this in detail. But again, it comes with two different options, like you can see over here. And another thing is that again, for most of whenever you're working with any application, for most of them, it will by default it will have based on the data which from the inputs it will or and it will have certain data types assigned to it, but you can change it. And it is very easy with Mapper 2.0 to transform data from one format to another. For example, from string to number, it is that easy. I can just if I for example, if I want to change like something like phone number from string to number, I can do that really easy right over here. And definitely in some instances it doesn't make sense to change the data type, and in that case it will show you the data validation error right over here. But in wherever in the instances whenever it makes sense to change the data type, it will do the transformation for you. For example, if you're changing something from string to number, it will do that for you. So it is very advanced in nature when you're comparing with Mapper 2.0. And really, if you're familiar with JSON path notation, right, there are a lot of help document available out there which will give you detailed idea on how JSON path works, and it is a standard, right? So and that is exactly that is the standard which we are following. So if you're working with any nested object, like I'm working over here with addresses, right, it is a lot easy where you don't have to do the looping anymore. With easily with the drop down itself, you can select from the drop down, and you can work with all the nested arrays like I'm working over here. It is that easy. So now you might have a question, right? You have a mapper 1.0 and you have mapper 2.0, right? Let me show you. You might have a question, right? I know I've covered. We have discussed some of the advantages, right? But I do have a flow which will clearly show you why Mapper 2.0 is way advanced than Mapper 1.0, and you should moving forward prefer Mapper 2.0 wherever you have that particular option. And let me open that flow really quickly. So let me go to another flow over here. And again, it is a very simple flow where I'm pulling orders from NetSuite to Shopify. And it has two line items over here. So if I open the mapping over here, so and if I so it has two line item. If I see, you can easily see over here. It has two line item over here with 53222, and uh, another item is five. Order ID is 53222. Item is T-shirt, and another item is coffee mug. So one order has two items over here. And say let to make this example simple, right? Say I'm just interested in pulling quantity. So over here in Mapper 1.0, if I click on preview, it is just pulling quantity of one one of my record, right? It is not pulling quantity of t-shirt. It's just pulling quantity of, like you can see, it is just pulling quantity of coffee mug with Mapper 1.0, right? Now I can either do looping or one of the simple thing what I need to do over here in case if I want quantity for both of my line item, if I want to do that, what I have to do over here is I have to define a transformation over here. So in for Mapper 1.0, so let me go to my rule one. Let me search for quantity. And over here, I have to define the transformation. Let me save and close. I have to come back over here. And now let me remove this. Let me select this. And now finally, the two quantities will be available. So this is what I need to do. I need to apply transformation or some sort of looping to traverse through all the line items when I'm working with Mapper 1.0. It is not that straightforward. But if I'm working, if now let me show you how easy to do the same thing if I'm working with Mapper 2.0. So let me do one thing. Let me close this. Let me discard changes. Let me remove this transformation. Let me save and close. Let me go back to my mapping and let me go back to Mapper 2.0 over here. Let me select my destination field as uh, over here. I'm interested in quantity, right? So let me define my object over here. Let me select quantity over here. Let me click on preview. That's it. I don't have to, because it is very easy to work with nested objects. Like you can see over here, I don't have to do any transformation. Right in the mapping, I can traverse through multiple items because it over here I'm just using object array because item is defined under order, right? So I'm just defining object array and that's it, right? And then I can define I can start defining other fields as well. That's easy. That is how easy it is to work with Mapper 2.0. Just wanted to show you this example so that you get a visual representation on why we are saying that you should go with Mapper 2.0 whenever you have that particular option available. So let me close this and I can just put as it is. And now let me go back to my presentation and let me go to my next slide over here. So finally, as we have covered Mapper 2.0, right? The main key takeaway was the visual representation, right? How clear from the dropdown itself. It was very clear because of the JSON path. It was very easy to work with any complex structure, right? Even if you have within arrays, with the drop down, you can easily work with it rather than going through the looping in case of Mapper 1.0, Mapper 2.0, you don't have to do that, right? User can create field level mapping. You can, you have, and again, all the remaining features like all the mapping and all those things remain same. Instead, it also has some advanced features like you can leverage lookup cache and so on, right? And lastly, it has some advanced features where you can do filtering, where you can do some sorting and so on, right? Or even you can populate all the destination field with Mapper 2.0. So it has some really good advanced features which aren't available with Mapper 1.0. Now, let discuss about transformation, right? So so let us, and again, right, we are using the same rule engine, which is 2.0 for Mappers 2.0 as well as Transformation 2.0. So if you understand Mapper 2.0, then it is really easy to work with Transformation 2.0. Now, you might have a questions, right? That what are transformation? So a transformation is your opportunity to change the source data before the flow processes it. So, and whenever I am working on any flow, right? First step, what I will do is that I will review the data which is coming out from the source application, and I will start thinking that how can I make this data more simple so that it is really easy to work downstream. And so, so for example, it means like removing fields that you don't need, or maybe reshaping nested structures to simplify it, or maybe calculating new fields, or maybe converting data into canonical format, right? You can do all sort of things with transformation. It is your place, basically, in a nutshell, it is your place to simplify your data so that it is very easy to work downstream, especially when you're working, you have multi steps flow where you're doing a lot of things in one flow. So, for example, when transformation comes into picture, right? So you don't have to. You don't need transformation each and everywhere. I will show you where exactly you don't need. But more importantly, where do you need transformation? For example, you have one source and then you're processing that data into multiple various destination, right? Or you have multiple lookup steps in between. It really makes sense to simplify your data to make your life easier to work with a flow, right? So that should be the first step where you're simplifying your data, and that is where transformation will help you out. Another example which I could think of is that, say, for example, you have multiple sources. You are pulling data from multiple sources, but you just have one destination. For example, you have multiple SQL server where you are pulling multiple different structures of data, and you are passing all the data to your one table in your data warehouse. In that case, it really helps you out that if you're transforming your data at each and every step so that it is a lot easier to add one more SQL server if that is the desire, if that is your requirement. So that is where exactly you can leverage transformation. So let me do one thing. I do have two, three slides for transformation, but instead of going through those slides, let me take an example let me show you a flow. And with the help of a flow, let me try to explain you what is transformation, what are the benefits of transformation, and so on, right? So so I have three examples over here. So let me open my first example over here. In this particular example, I'm pulling employee data from the HR system over here. So it has all the so if you preview the data which is coming out from your HR system, it has all the information related to employees, right? Like it has details like it has company level details as well as employee header level information. Like then if you go one step down, it has employment related details, addresses, all the skill sets, skill categories, what project those employees are working on, and so on, right? So it has all this information available over here. If I click on preview, let me close this. And in this flow, I'm pulling my HR information and I do have a branching in place. So based on the employee type, if it is a full-time employee, it will go through the first branch. If it is a contractor, it will go through the second branch. And if it is a full-time employee, then I'm creating a user in my in Microsoft Entra. Then I'm creating a user in Zendex, creating a user in Jira, and finally creating a user in Acumatica, which is my ERP in this example. And if it is a contractor, I'm just creating a user in Concur, in SAP Concur. That is exactly what I'm doing over here with this particular flow. As this flow have multi steps, right? It and it really makes sense to transform your data. Maybe one reason for the transformation is that you don't require all the fields which are coming out from your source application. Like over here, I don't require all the fields like skill set and so on, right? Because all the application on which I'm creating user, it doesn't require all the fields. And I just want to work with subsets of fields which I'm interested in, like some personal information and addresses. That is all what I'm interested in. So that is why I have the transformation in place where I'm just selecting handful of fields so that I just have to worry about mapping those fields and I'm not having all the fields which are coming out from my source application. So over here, uh, so I'm not going to, so we earlier we had something called rule 1.0, which is transformation 1.0. And again, I'm not going into the details of rule 1.0 because that is not we are recommending to we are not recommending any user to be using it. So let me cover transformation 2.0 over here. So to start with, right, it comes with three different types of modes. And so over here I'm as of now I'm using So first mode is modify input record. For example, I just want to do some basic modification. For example, I want a full name instead of last name and first name. So I'm just interested in modifying one record or one field. Sorry, one field. I can just, or maybe some other modification where I want to modify some date format or something like that. I will just, and then I don't care about, and I just want other input fields to be as it is, input data to be as it is. I can just use modify input record. In this case, I'm using the second op mode, which is create output record from input record because I just want to work with subset of field. I'm not interested in working with all the fields like I mentioned. So this is where this second mode really come into picture, where I can select which field I want to work with, right? And I can modify certain structure if I want to. Yeah. So this is where exactly, and that is the reason I'm using this second option. And the third option is in case if I'm working with any data warehouse or with I'm working with any CSV file, any file, so on, and I want everything as a output as a rows instead of an a record. That is when I will be using third option, and I will be covering all of them in detail. But as of now, I'm just using this particular mode over here. Another option is that you can, like you saw in Mapper 2.0, you can refresh the input fields and it will refresh all the input field from the sample data which you are specifying within your flow, right? And again, if you see the UI, it is quite similar to Mapper 2.0 because the engine which is supporting Mapper 2.0 and Transformation 2.0 is Rules 2.0. So again, if you understand Mapper really well, you easily understand transformation because the background, the engine which is running is one and the same. Again, if I'm working with nested object, like I am in this case, I can just expand all, collapse all, and so on, right? So I can do that. If I want to search with the output field, right? I can, if I'm working with hundreds of record, I can just search with any output fields, right? And another powerful option is that I can populate output fields right with this particular option. So that this will save you a lot of time. So now you can easily populate your output fields. And if you want to remove all your rules, you can easily remove all your rules with this particular option. So again, all these options are quite similar to Mapper 2.0, which is our, which we just saw, right? And over here, again, if I click on this setting icon, now what you can do is that if I click over here, like again, it supports full transformation type. Like standard is like same one-to-one field mapping. Then another thing is hard coded if you want to hard code certain field value lookup as well as handlebar expression, right? So again, it is similar to what we saw in Mapper 2.0. So not going through all these details, but again, it is quite similar in nature, right? And again, from the data type, we support all the data type which use like string, number, boolean, object, array of string, array of numbers, array of boolean, array of objects, which you saw with Mapper 2.0. So again, it is quite similar to Mapper 2.0, and over here it is following JSON. If you see over here, right, it is following JSON path over here. So it is not easy to work with nested arrays like over here for addresses, for scales, for projects. I do have nested all this. I have nested structure over here, right? So it is that easy. You don't, let me discard the changes. You don't have to work with you don't have to work with you don't have to anymore. You don't have to worry about looping your data. With the drop down itself, you can work with complex structure like you can see over here. And then it is pretty much similar where you can preview your data to make sure that you are getting the output as expected. That is that easy. But again, most of the things are quite similar to Mapper 2.0. The only difference over here is that transformation is the after pulling the data out of your source application, transformation is the first step. So if you just want to work with instead of fields, right? This should be the first step so that you don't have to work with all the fields which are coming out of your destination application. Or if you want to, in some instances, if you're working with very complex structure, you want to simplify that particular structure, even you can do that using transformation. Like, for example, in this case, if within companies there are employees, within employees there is project, within project if there is skill set, for example, and if you want to simplify the structure as well, you can easily do that. Or over here, for example, if I want to add something like my new object, for example, and let me add this as an object. Let me confirm it. And now I want to add something like my new field on destination site, right? So this is a destination site, and this is the input data which is coming out from your input object. And if I want to map it to token, uh, or maybe let me see if I have any, or maybe if I want to map it to uh, I want to map this new field to phone number, for example. I can just preview the data and see my new field will have that particular phone number. So it is that easy to work with nested objects. It is that easy where you can if you even if you want to define any new object on your destination side, you can easily define new object, new field. You can change the data type if that is the requirement. But by default, based on the field which you are working with, it will select some data. It will select some default data type, but you can change it. You do have that flexibility, but it is not easy to work with any new field or new object if you want to. Delete this and let me close this. And now if I go back, right, let me cover my second example over here. So in this particular example, again, I'm pulling my data from my HR system over here, but over here I don't care about the payload because I want, say, I'm interested in the entire payload which is coming out or entire data set which is coming out from the source application, right? So I'm not making changes to, so I'm not just working with subsets. Say I'm interested in entire data set which is coming out from my source application, but I just want to have one more field as a full name because that is the requirement for one of the destination application where I need to have full name. Thus, in that case, I'm just modifying one record as a, and I'm just creating a new record as a full name in my in my in my output, like you can see over here, where I'm concatenating my first name with the last name using handlebar expression, and that is where it is instead of using the second option, it really makes sense to use first first mode, which is modify input record, because I'm just modifying one record or maybe one or two, three records, right? So that is what I'm interested in. And I don't care if the remaining payload is as it is, I'm fine with that. So this is when you can leverage the second option which we have in place. Now, if I go back, let me open my third options over here. And if I click on the transformation over here, if I click on preview, so this is the third mode, right? So say in this case, right, I want to create a CSV file. So this is a over here I'm getting a record for my employee, and maybe that employee, quite possible that that employee are working on multiple projects, right? And I want to create a CSV file based on what is the employee ID and what all projects they are working on. That is what I want that all information I want to store on my CSV file, right? So over here, in that case, because I want to store all this information in CSV file, it makes sense to grab this input record, leverage transformation, and like you can see over here, I instead of creating an output record, I'm creating a row level information over here where it has some information like employee ID, department, full name, what is the project ID, and what is the project name. So I am creating, so with this option, you can create multiple output rows based on the input record. And that is exactly what I'm doing over here. So this option comes, it is really handy if you are working if we are working on similar use case where you want to create a CSV file or send everything to the data warehouse or database where you're storing everything as a row. That is exactly what I'm doing over here. So let me close this. Let me go back to my first flow over here. And let me open my transformation again. And again, if you notice over here, right, this transformation will work based on record by record, right? That it will be applied on record by record, like you can see over here. But and but another option which we still have is something called JavaScript, where in case if you are a developer and you prefer doing applying all this logic instead of leveraging transformation 2.0 using a script, you can do that. You can write a JavaScript to transform your data in from your for transforming your data. You can easily leverage, you can do scripting if that is, if you're an advanced user or if you're a developer. I would say rather if you're a developer and if you prefer scripting, you can do that. But again, all these options are working on one record at a time. But say you are an advanced user, right? You also have something called pre-save hook. So you can also write a JavaScript as a pre-save as a hook. And over here, the only difference is that it is working on the entire page rather than one record. So if you are a super advanced user, if you are a developer, you prefer writing a script, and if you want to work on the page level rather than a record level, you can always do scripting to do all the transformation over here. So the only difference between the JavaScript which we have on the transformation 2.0 versus the pre-hook script is that the JavaScript on the transformation is working on the record level. And over here, pre-hook script is working on the page level. And page can have number of records, not just one record. But another advantages you might get if you're writing a pre-hook script is that you will get all the runtime level benefits. You can do a lot more if you are a really super user, and you don't have to do this. But again, this is another option as well, which is available within our platform. Now, s- we have covered all this advanced options which are available with Transformation 2.0. Now, I want to cover one more scenario. So, for example, let's say that I'm just pulling order from NetSuite into Shopify, or I'm just pulling where I'm just working with two application, right? So- And this is a really good use case, right? So in this case, I don't really need a transformation. I can really leverage Mapper 2.0 like I showed you, right? To even if I need to do certain transformation on the field level, I can. I can leverage mapping. I don't really need a transformation because I'm just working with two fields over here, right? It is not a complex use case. It is pretty much a very simple use case. So just want to highlight one point over here. Transformation is not required for each and every flow. You need to, it is only require it only makes sense when you're working with some complex structure, or if you're working with multi-step flow like I showed you with example one, or if you have multiple source application and just one single destination application. That is when transformation 2.0 makes sense. But in this example I can really leverage mapper 2.0. I can do all the things with Mapper 2.0 and I don't really need transformation. So there are certain events where you don't even require transformation, and you shouldn't be using transformation when it is not required. So I know I've covered a lot, right? And so I've covered all this use cases, right? So uh, and even I've covered certain example where you shouldn't be leveraging transformation, as well as best practices where you should be using transformation. So again, I want to now open the floor for any Q&A, for any question you might have. And, and again, right? So any question for any of the any any anyone over here on Mapper
Uh,
2.0, Transformation 2.0. So, yeah.
yeah, Kevin, I do have a question, and then if anybody else has any questions, feel free to. You can post it in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself. Um, here in a minute. So I have two questions, Kevin. First of all, in the if you use the auto populate destination fields in
Yes.
either one of the mapper or transformation 2.0, does it automatically build that the same nested array
Yeah.
structure as the
Yes.
input?
Yes. And that is a great question, Corey. Let me show you. Let me give you let me show you how it works. So let me open my flow one. Let me open my transformation over here. Let me delete everything. Let me remove all the
Yeah.
rules over here. And let me auto populate output fields over here. So if you see, right, it did for the for, for the destination site, it did created the like the nested object, right? It did created a structure for me over here on the destination site. The only thing what I need to do is I need to select my select all the date, all the fields from my source object over here. And the good thing is that if I start working over here, for example, if I select company ID, it is going to select, because I'm just working with one nested array. It will from the drop down I can easily select it. But basically, the auto populate will work on the destination side where it will give you the entire structure. And if you want, then you can start removing it. But it is not working on the source side. It is working on the destination side. This is a very good call out, so that you don't have to worry about the destination site. Even for certain application, it will show you all the required fields as well. If certain fields are required for those object for that particular application, it will show you what is required, what are mandatory fields.
Okay.
If via
Awesome.
API, if we are able to get that particular information. But pretty much now what you need to do is just from the drop down, you have to select the fields from your from your source data, because the destination is already filled out for you if you're using the auto populate option.
Awesome.
Great.
Can you stay right here? Because my follow-up question
Yes.
is based
Yes.
on based on that this screen. Thanks for that. So my other question is, and this isn't this is just more of like a personal, maybe a pet peeve, I guess. So the destination is on the left and the source is on the right. And everything in Celigo to date has been source on the left, destination on the right. And I think I understand like visually, the on the destination and the nested structure may be easier to see on the left. But even if you change to that view that you showed before, where it shows the input and output on the bottom of the screen, it shows the input on the left and the output on the right, but that's reversed of what is of the mapping up above. So I just wondered if you have any insight to
Uh,
why the design is like that.
I I know. That is a great feedback. I know Rule 1.2 or Transformation 1.0 had a input on the left hand side and output fields on the right hand side, right? But I know
Yeah.
Mapper 2.2 or Transformation 2.2 is structured this way. I First, I need to reach out to my product team to understand why they designed this way. My assumption would be because you are working with Nest, it it makes life easy to work with nested objects, right? But again, I will reach out to them specifically on why they reversed everything from left to right and right to left, especially when for this particular mapping piece. Will definitely, but good feedback.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I it just when I first saw the 2.0 versions of these, it took a minute to kind of figure out what was going on because it was the opposite of I
I
think
would
what
say
we're used to, right?
to be honest with you, that is a good feedback, right? Visually, because especially if I'm working with this particular layout, right, where I'm seeing
Yeah.
input over here, it makes a lot easier if I'm seeing, likewise, if I'm seeing input fields over here and output fields over here. Totally agree with you. Let me check with them that if
Okay.
in case if there are any other reason why they reverse the, like if you see rule 1.0 over here, and even in the mapping, right? Inputs are on the left and output is on the right. But for Maple
Yeah.
2.2, it is reversed. So let me check with them
Yeah.
why they did what they did.
Okay. Thank you.
But
Thank you.
from
That was the
feature
only that was the
standpoint,
only questions that I had.
just one side note, right? When Maple 2.0 and Transformation 2.0 was released, for a couple of months still, I was still working with Mapper 1.2 as well as Transformation 1.2 because that is what I was very familiar with, right? But then when I started knowing all the benefits and started learning more about 2.0, that is when I started using 2.0. And once I started using 2.0, I never used 1.2 only in the instances where, for example, when you're working with NetSuite, only 1.0 is available, right? There are only some instances that is when I use 1.0, but apart from that, I prefer 2.0, at least from the mapper side. And for transformation side, mapper transformation 2.2 is a huge benefit because it supports all these different modes. And you cannot work with nested. It is a lot difficult to work with nested arrays, right? Where you have to do all the shitty coding where you have to write loops and so on. You can get rid of all those looping and so on with 2.0. But yeah,
So
again,
that's a good point. Sorry, you mentioned that 2.0 is not a Mapper 2.0 is not available with some import types.
yes,
Is that what you said? And NetSuite's one of
yes.
them?
Yeah, that's what is one of them. It is not available
Yeah.
today. I know product team is
Okay.
actively working on switching everything to Maple 2.0, but it is not available today. So if your source is NetSuite, it is fine, and your destination is any other application, it is fine. You can work with Maple 2.0. But if your destination is NetSuite, you cannot work with Maple 2.0.
Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, anytime. And again, right, feel free to reach out to me via email in case if even in future if you have any question regarding transformation mappers and so on.
Great.
But yeah, over to you, Corey.
Um, So with that, we'll go ahead and end for the day. Kevin, thank you again so much for joining. Great presentation. I definitely learned some stuff today. I hope everybody learned some stuff and has some good takeaways to help you with your future integrations. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all hopefully at our next meeting in April. Have a good
Thank
one.
you all.